Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to start taking a look at some of the non-standard approaches. We're going to be starting that non-standard approach with the localizer approach, which is basically an ILS approach with a little modification in that you have no glide slope. So let's go ahead and take a look at our situation today. So we're currently over Aspen. This is actually Colorado in the United States, and this is one of the most dangerous approaches in the United States because of its not only complexity but the fact that it's not very precise. Of course, adding to the complication today is the fact that we have a very strong wind. So that'll make things kind of fun, plus ice. We'll see. So first things first, let's take a look at this approach. So what a localizer approach is an approach where you are provided with left and right, that is lateral guidance, without being provided with up and down, that is glide slope guidance, which means for us, we need to be able to calculate where we need to be during the entire flight, up and down, while our system will basically provide us, like I said, with the lateral information. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're going to do here. We're going to be starting at Ajax intersection, which is actually right here. Unfortunately, the simulator put us up so high, we're actually going to have to do a quick little donut here, like a fake hold, basically. We're going to line ourselves up, tune to 111.15, which will be the localizer. That'll get us down to the ground. And then as we cross each one of these waypoints, we're going to have to maintain a specific altitude. What altitude? Well, let's take a look at things from the side. When we cross Jargo intersection, which is also 13.1 nautical miles away from the localizer, we'll be able to do this with our DME, we have to be at or above 13,400 feet. When we cross KASE, we have to be at 12,900 feet. When we cross FMSO, which is 9 nautical miles away from the end of the runway, we have to be at 12,300. When we cross DOIP, we have to be at 11,700. Now, this is where it gets interesting. How far down can we go before we actually have to start thinking about, oh, missed approach? And that's going to be listed down here. By the way, one thing I've never mentioned before is what these actual A, B, C, Ds actually mean. They refer to the size of the aircraft. Size A are going to be like small propeller jobs, basically. Again, this is actually by speed. B is actually what category we're in, which means our ultimate missed approach altitude is going to be 1,020 feet. Of course, 3 miles of visibility will be our minimum there. So there's an extra complication in this approach, and that's what makes this one so darn dangerous, is the fact our approach angle is going to be 6.59 degrees. That's insane. So if you remember the classic rule where you take your speed, divide by 2, and add some zeros to determine your vertical speed, we now have to basically take our normal speed and add a 0 onto it to calculate what our new descent speed is going to be. So this is going to be pretty sketchy. So this should be a lot of fun. Missed approach, of course, is even more insane. Take a look at this. If we hit the SAAG without seeing the ground, well, we have to actually just turn the plane around and follow a back course on a completely separate localizer in order to safely get back to Lynn's intersection. So this will definitely be kind of a fun run for us today. And let's go pop over to the simulator and see what we can do with it. Okay, so here we are. We're sitting inside again. This is a TBM 930. This is known icing conditions, so we're going to have to make sure that our anti-icing technology is working properly today. Obviously, we don't have airframe de-ice, but we at least have wing de-ice, so we're not going to be a total ice ball by the time we get down to the ground. So let's go ahead and unpause. And let's repause. We're going to get all sorts of angry kind of things right here. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just go ahead and lose a little bit of altitude here and do a nice gentle circling, so that I can go ahead and get myself down to the actual altitude that I want to be at. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to make sure all my icing technology is online. This is a light, don't worry about it, and the inertial separator. Obviously, we don't want to be causing too much trouble here. We've also got a warning about the auto select. I'm going to go double check why that's being annoying. All right, now we're good to go. I'm going to go double check my bleed as well. Bleeding system. Again, when you come out of pause like that, it can give you a little bit of trouble. All right, now we're in good shape. Let's go ahead and continue my little descent. Our first altitude is going to be 3,900 feet. That is going to be the altitude we need to cross Jargo intersection. Remember, Jargo intersection is simply going to be 13.1 nautical miles away from our destination. So let's go ahead and get our radios all squared away. Our first frequency is going to be for the actual localizer, which is 111.15. Switch that over. And then on my second one, I'm going to set the back course localizer frequency, because you know that we're going, oh, that's COM 1, sorry. Let's go ahead down to, scroll up just a little bit. There it is right there. Let's say 108.5. Beautiful. Okay, now we're in good shape. Okay, let's continue our descent. That's low enough. Bring our nose up just a teeny tiny bit. Again, I'm doing a non-standard circling procedure here just to go ahead and get us lined up because we started in the air today. So we're going to swing around to Ajax. I'm going to go ahead and double check to make sure my active navigation is my localizer. I'm going to set it to a heading of 151 degrees. If you're wondering where I'm getting the 151 from, if you remember a little bit earlier when we took a look at our actual plan, let's go flip that back up for just a second here, you can see that my approach course is going to be 151, so that's where I'm getting that number from. Okay, let's go ahead and continue to spin ourselves around here. Doing too many things at once. This is a very dangerous approach. You actually need special training for it in the real world. But you know me. Who needs training? All right, it's looking pretty good right now. I'm just going to continue lining ourselves up a little bit here. I am trying to lose some speed here because I need to put everything down as soon as we start our actual approach. So I'm going to go ahead and say nav mode on, autopilot on. And I'm going to go ahead and hold my altitude also. So down to 13,400 feet. Go vertical speed mode on. Lose just a teeny tiny bit of altitude. Perfect. Delightful. Excellent. All right, now we're actually stabilized and ready to land the plane. I'm going to go ahead and flip on my landing lights. Everything looks pretty good now. Okay, so here's where things get exciting. So we're going to get ourselves down to about 120 knots. So what we need to do in order to know how far away we are from the actual ground is we're going to turn on our DME display. To do that on this particular aircraft, I'm going to come over here. You can actually turn bearing 1 on, and you can see I'm 19.8 nautical miles away. All right, we're going to be crossing that localizer now. The aircraft's going to be taking a left. Okay, so the moment this number reads 13.1, let me skip back to our plan, we know we're crossing Jargu intersection. We need to be at 13,400 feet. So just kind of keep that in the back of your head if you're following along with us so far. So now we're approached, we're lined up with the localizer. Remember, we're not getting glide slope information here. So what I want to do now is I want to get down to my actual approach speed. How's the icing? Oh, God. Yeah, I knew that was going to be a problem. You can't fly through clouds without getting ice. All right, start proceeding. We're doing a pretty good job of tracking it. Obviously, tracking this one by hand is something much bigger than this. Gets a little bit scary. We're technically a Type B aircraft, so our absolute minimum is going to be 1,020 feet. All right, keep an eye on your distances. Remember, when that says 13.1, we have to start manually descending through these. Oh, well, there's a mountain right here, but you'll just have to take my word for it. All right, about 120 knots should be just about sufficient for us today. Obviously, if you're doing this thing in an airliner, this gets a little more exciting because everything happens a lot quicker. Be glad we can go slow. All right, time to start setting everybody up. We have just 3 nautical miles to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial this into my minimum altitude, which is going to be 1,220 feet. 1,002, we're going to say 1,200 feet. My speed is perfect right now. I'm going to go ahead and define my minimums. Go to my PFD page, go to minimums, set them to radar altitude. They are 2,200 feet. Wow. Wow, now that's what I call a minimum. Okay. And now we're ready. We're perfectly lined up. Our speed is good. We don't have any flaps or anything down yet. Again, we're not using anything. As soon as we get into position, what we're going to do is we're going to arm the vertical speed to go at a descent rate of whatever our current speed is with a 0. Because remember, it's going to be a 6.5 degree descent as opposed to a 3 degree descent, which is going to be drastically different. Keep in mind, if it is a 3 degree descent, we just take half our speed down to 0. It's pretty easy. And again, any ILS approach out there becomes a localizer approach if you don't have glide slope information. That's all there is to it. Getting very close. I'm going to go ahead and put down both my gear as well as my first notch of flaps. Increase my power a little bit. Looks pretty good. Just double checking everything. 13, let's go. So vertical speed, and we're going to set it to 1,200 feet per minute. Put down my extra notch of flaps. Going to have to give quite a bit of power here. Now watch how steeply this aircraft is going to descend. Now in the real world, we can actually already see the runway, which is awesome. All right, so we have to keep our speed right around 120 knots. When this says 10.9, we should theoretically be at an altitude of about 12,900 feet. But I'm seeing that our autopilot is having a very difficult time controlling that. So I'm actually going to have to wheel that in a little bit in order to control it. Because we can't actually cross 900 feet until this number says 10.9. It's going to be close. Nope. So in this case, I'm actually going to level the airplane off because it's not safe to proceed any further down from here. All right, as it's leveling off, I'll go ahead and reset my 10,200. Once we cross the 10.9, I can start descending again. Again, because the autopilot was much too aggressive in that descent, you have to stay on top of that. You don't want to descend below whatever that minimum altitude is. So we need to be at 12,300 feet when we cross this DME of 9. So again, this aircraft is way over descending in this mode. So I'm going to go ahead and reel it in a little bit more. These are almost easier to fly by hand, to be honest. All right, when this says the number 9, we should theoretically be crossing 12,300 feet. And again, if you're wondering where that number is, there's the number 9, there's the 12,300. All right, it looks like we're going to be really close this time. Watch this, watch this. Oh, it's going to be close. Again, there's no glide slope here. You're doing this by hand. Oh, we did it. Hey, I still got it. All right, make sure our flaps are in good position. Let's do Giphy. We have our gear down, we have our inertial separator turned on, we have our flaps down, and our yaw damper needs to be shut off for landing. It's going to get grumpy when you do that. All right, let's continue. So when this number here reads 7.1, it should be 11,700 feet. Oh, I think we're descending too quickly again. Again, honestly, these are easier to fly by hand, but a lot of people do like the autopilot. So when this says 7.1, we're going to be crossing the next standard. Oh, it's going to be close. No, we're early. So I'm going to slow down my descent just a little bit by adjusting my vertical speed. Because again, when this is 7.1, we're supposed to be crossing 11,700. We are too low at this moment. Okay, now that we've crossed it, now we can continue our descent all the way down to the ground. Seems about 1,000 feet per minute. Seems to be the magical speed, at least for this automatic pilot. And now it's time to start thinking about our missed approach procedure. So the missed approach on this one is a back course. So if you remember a minute ago when we were setting up our radio, we set the other radio to the back course in the case that we have to go ahead and activate it because we can't find the runway. So I'm going to continue going down here. All right, so what we're going to do is when we cross the minimums, look at my radio altitude. When this hits 2,200 or this hits 10,220, or 10,020, I should say, we need to make a decision whether or not we're going to proceed with our landing. So let's go ahead and make sure that's set up. That looks good. Our descent rate is very steep here. We're a little slow, but there's also a headwind, which makes things extra exciting. All right, our missed approach point is when this says 4 nautical miles. Oh, we've just lost data. Did you see that? We've actually dipped underneath. So I'm going to continue proceeding here. Again, this is why you have to be right on top of your stuff. Look out the window. I do see the runway, and we're crossing minimums. All right, landing. So now notice how tremendously steep this approach is. Because this aircraft has a spectacular set of flaps, which are becoming giant ice balls right now, we're actually able to proceed with this approach. So that's basically all there is to a localizer approach. Just remember, constantly be monitoring the DME, constantly be monitoring your left and right. Make sure you don't have any issues with signal. In this case, it dropped off. Perhaps somebody clicked the switch by accident. I'm sure you've all seen the movie Airplane by now. Just kidding. So, of course, something like that could have happened. Keep that in mind on your approach. In the real world, of course, we would have gone all the way down here. We would have flipped our CDI mode to the Localizer 2 and then set the new heading, which would have been Tree 0 Tree, and gone ahead and thrown a missed approach in there. The missed approach in this one is very scary because you basically have to climb up to 14,000 feet. Once we get a little lower, we'll take a better look at that. Oh man, this wind is great. I love this. Now, I feel sorry for the passengers on an approach like that. I tell you, the visual approaches are much safer coming into Aspen. But again, this is a super dangerous approach normally. We got lucky. We got picked up a lot of ice, but we basically got lucky. Now, when you do normal localizer approaches, this is much, much simpler because you could basically just look out the window. And again, take a look at your glide slope. Some people actually like to dive all the way down to the missed approach altitude and stay there all the way throughout the approach. That's tremendously dangerous to do, especially in areas where we have mountains this large. All right, nice and easy, nice and easy. Remember, we got a lot of ice. And we are down. Delightful. Of course, we could flip it into reverse, but I'm not going to do that because I don't like to see the ITT warning. All right, hopefully this video is helpful for you as far as doing localizer approaches. I picked one of the hardest localizer approaches you could do just so you can see how you can kind of monitor it on the way down. Keep in mind, depending on what the weather does, your actual descent speed may change. If you have a headwind, for example, that's going to cause you to take longer to get down, in which case you need less descent speed. So let's go one thing quick before we get too far here, is we want to take a look at that missed approach procedure. Had we gotten to that point point and discovered that we lost that radio signal, what we would have to have done is switched to this frequency and turned the aircraft around and then follow the tree zero tree. Back course just means if you have a back course mode on your autopilot, that's what you're going to need to follow. But believe it or not, this does go backwards. You can follow it using a normal technique. Once, of course, we finish this turn, we'd climb to 14,000 feet on this heading. We'd cross this particular place. Then we go to Lynn's intersection, which is 12.6 nautical miles away from this localizer. And then we go ahead and start our approach again. All right, enjoy.